Hi, welcome back to the 41st Tango Banter. Can you believe I've done 40 of these? It's kind of amazing. I wanted to start out today's episode by announcing an upcoming special sale that I'm doing for one day. Okay, just one day. It is going to happen on Black Friday, which is this Friday. And the sale is on a special 1 year long musicality training that I am starting in January of 2023. In brief, the training is going to run for 12 months and it focuses on giving you the most essential musicality knowledge that you need to succeed on the social dance floor. So it is not geared for people who want to dive into the more conceptual, historical side of tango music. It's not an academic class. This course, this training, is specifically to give you the essential knowledge you need as a dancer, which is a little different from what's out there. I've been studying tango musicality for some time now, and when I started, I was completely lost. I knew very little about orchestras or about, let's just put it this way, I kind of knew the difference between milonga, valse, and tango. Like, that's about the extent of my knowledge. By the time I was already dancing, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. And since then, I've been digging into all sorts of exploration and realizing that some of this stuff really needs to be taught from the very beginning. I'm kind of surprised I've even lasted in tango as long as I have without these basic musical principles. And I was on the verge of quitting tango, actually, because like many, many people, I was in this place of deep frustration about not getting the dances that I wanted, not getting them consistently, not being able to predict my experience at the milonga, having this total crapshoot experience where anytime I go, sometimes it's great, sometimes it sucks, and it's completely out of my control. Now, I didn't know that it could be different. And the reason why I didn't know is because I wasn't really aware of the music and the role that the music actually plays in every layer of this social event called milonga. Once I learned these principles and realized I can use them to my advantage, that I don't actually have to be a professional level, perfect technique dancer in order to be able to dance with advanced level dancers. I don't have to know all of the vocabulary. All I have to do is know the music. And if I know the music, I can pretty much curate my own experience. I can choose the perfect partners for every tanda. I can knowingly, in an informed way, say no to certain tandas because I know they're not going to be good. That's how much power music has. And so the focus of my work as a teacher in the last couple of years has really shifted to training people in musicality. And I've been developing different types of curriculum of different lengths. I've started with weekend workshops. I've tried multi-week workshops. Just now I finished a 6-week workshop. I've done it in different formats, and I've been teaching it as part of my Chicas del Tango Practica here in LA on Tuesdays. And I've learned a couple of things from that process. Number one, that this stuff is very powerful. Okay, it's not just that it worked on me. Okay, no. I mean, I had a hunch when I started this work, but I needed proof. I've actually needed to impart this knowledge to dancers and then watch and see if it worked for them. Because that's the true test for me, because I really want to teach stuff that is helpful, you know? I don't want to waste my time giving something to someone that they're not going to be able to actually use. So I've been teaching this material, and I can tell you that it works, okay? I've seen and I've heard dancers give me this feedback of how much more empowered they feel, how much more fun they're having, how much less stressful it is, and that feeling of, being sort of present and in the moment and being able to enjoy things and let go of other things like that, all of that has increased. So the overall experience for them has been transformed, and that's amazing. Okay, so that's one thing that I learned. The second thing I learned about teaching this material and these musicality concepts over the last few years is that we need time. We need time for these concepts to permeate our consciousness and be digested and then spread through our cells in our body and then actually translated into action. And it just takes time. There's no way that you can make it go faster, and you wouldn't want to, because let nature be nature. Yeah, it just makes sense that let things take as long as they take. That's become sort of my mantra. And after this last 6-week training that I did, at the end, I was like, 6 weeks is not enough. It's not enough. We're just barely scratching the surface. So this is why I've decided to launch a year-long training, because I know you're going to need that year. And I know that the information that you're going to get, you're going to be able to apply it. You're going to have assignments to apply it in real time at the Malanga and actually see how these things start changing your experience. You're going to get worksheets and handouts and illustrations. So very multimedia. I'm an artist. I've trained as an artist. I have 2 master's degree in art. So I have a lot of creative juice that I'm putting into this program, always looking for the best way that I can convey a concept so that it is applicable in as quickly as possible. Okay, there's literally nothing more exciting for me than to facilitate someone's light bulb going off. Okay, it's just, there's nothing like it. When I see people's faces just light up when they suddenly realize that something that they knew all along, which all of us do. If you've danced for even a little while, this music is in our bodies. It's like we're dreaming it. We are listening to it and dancing it all the time. So it's in us, but we have to be given that revelation of what is it that we're actually hearing? What is it that we're actually experiencing? So I am really looking forward to exploring this with a group of people for a year. And I think it will be a really fun adventure. And I encourage you to check out the link that I've provided in the show notes. And I know I've taken a long time to say all of this. Thanks for hanging in. And if you have any questions about it, please let me know. All the details are on my website, so I'm not going to talk about any more of this. And let's get to our topic, which is a good one. And I got to tell you guys, some of you have been asking me about how I come up with my topics. And it's a good question. How do I come up with my topics? It's a little bit like fishing, I guess, because sometimes I find them really easily and other times not so much. And I've talked so much about marathons and festivals this month, and I was sort of at a loss to what to say, what more to say. And then really about 20 minutes before I was committed to sitting down to record this episode, this question came up. And I like to believe that it was a question somebody was having out there, and I just sort of caught it on the waves out there in the ethers. And so this question, how do you know you're ready to attend a festival or a marathon? And I like this question because it can also be used for other situations, right? It can be life situations. So it's a metaphor. It's a real metaphor, and I love metaphors, okay? So the first thing I want to say about how do you know you're ready to go to a festival or a marathon? Because a lot of people have been messaging me, telling me they'd never been to a festival and marathon. And I guess I'm so used to going to them that I'm sort of like, why not? Why haven't you gone? But it's probably because a lot of you might not feel ready. You feel maybe you don't know enough. You're a beginner. You don't know anyone. You're supposed to be of a certain level. Maybe the social pressure is there too. You're nervous about going somewhere where nobody knows you or you don't know anybody. You're afraid you're going to make a fool of yourself. All of those things. It just goes on and on. So this episode is for you. And maybe you can resonate with some of these feelings already. If you are feeling anxious about going to that next level. You know, one of my students recently said that they don't feel ready to go to a real milonga yet. They're just going to a practica and they're waiting for that moment when they're ready. So this kind of feeling of ready, when am I going to be ready, is sort of a metaphor for many things. So I want to point out the reality, maybe the higher truth, maybe even a little bit of a frustrating truth. I do believe that if you're asking the question, then you're probably ready. Because you could not be even asking the question. To you, it's like not even in the realm of possibility. You're like, not gonna do it. But if you're asking the question, then to me that says there's a desire there. And whenever there's desire, I think we want for someone to approve it. We want someone to tell us that it's okay for us to want that yes, it's time for us to want that thing. But the higher truth of this is that nobody needs to tell you. You can decide for yourself when you're ready. And unfortunately, most of us will never take that opportunity to feel ready. Like, I'm just going to feel ready now. Like, it's hard to do that. If you can do that, you're like a Zen master. So it's hard to decide to feel ready. Therefore, ergo, not feeling ready is just an aspect of actually being ready. You know, if you're feeling that tension, if there's no tension around it for you, you're just like, I'm not ready, don't want it, don't care. But if there's a little bit of tension where you're like, oh, I'm not ready, but I kind of wanna, but when am I going to, then I think it actually is pointing to the fact that you really are ready. Nobody else is really going to know if you're ready either. It's going to depend on you giving that person your power and taking their word, and sometimes we need to do that. We put people on a pedestal and we say, okay, this person knows better than me. But that's a decision that we make in that moment. We say, I'm going to listen to this person's and I'm going to take their words as law. So if they say I'm ready, then I'm ready. But ultimately, nobody really can know for sure that you're ready. So because it depends on everybody's definitions, right? So you might talk to one person and they're going to be like, no, you're not ready. You don't even know how to walk yet. And another person's like, oh my God, you're so ready. Just go and see what it's like and don't care, right? It just depends on where you fall on that spectrum. And ultimately, if you're feeling this tension, you're just going to have to go, okay? Let's just make a deal. You're going to have to go. Yes, you're not ready. Maybe you're never going to feel ready, but just decide and take that plunge, because you're just never going to know what's on the other side of that if you don't do that. And if you have tension around it, if there's this active question for you, then you owe it to yourself to explore. And speaking of plunges, this reminds me of a great illustration of how it feels to have to do that. It came to my mind when I was writing out my notes for this episode. Somebody had sent me a link of this video documenting people of different ages that are not swimmers having to jump off of that really high diving board, like the Olympic height diving board. They have to jump into a pool. And it's obvious that none of them do that on a regular basis. And it's just video of them attempting this. And it's so powerful. I actually was moved to tears. And I've watched this many times because it was such a great metaphor, again, for what it feels like a lot of times, and how scared people get, even though they know that on the other end of this experience, they're just going to jump in the water, okay? You know you're not going to die. But it feels like you are. It feels like you're just, it's this unknown. And there's this one particular woman, this older woman, who comes up to the edge, and she does this several times where she just comes to the edge and she's like, no way, and walks back, comes back to the edge, does it again. And she just does it back and forth. And as I'm watching her, I'm like, oh my God, that's me. That's what I've done. And eventually she's just like, no, she's not going to do it. And she starts climbing down the stairs to go down. And about a third of the way down, she just stops And in one big motion, like one sequence, smooth choreography of movements, she climbs back up those stairs and walks straight to the edge and jumps. And it was breathtaking because to do that, to be able to will yourself to turn back around and just go for this thing that's so scary. Oh my God. I don't know about you, but it feels terrifying. But like sometimes in life, we kind of have to do that. So it could be like that for you with marathons, where you're just gonna have to do that, or it will be like that for you with that next level of tango event that you attend, a milonga, or maybe when you decide to ask somebody out of your league for a dance, or you decide to perform or DJ. Like every side of this has an equivalent, and it always will feel like that. You're just going to have to sort of own it and go for it. So philosophy aside, I think that was a pretty philosophical, mindset oriented answer. You know me, I always want to give something practical. And I think it's important that you go away from this episode not just thinking to yourself, okay, I'm just going to go for it, but I really don't know what that means and I don't know what to do. So I want you to go away having a sense of direction. So there are certain skills that are good to focus on that when you cultivate them will help you have a good time at a marathon. They're just sort of the basics that you would want to understand when you go to a marathon, so you don't feel like totally fish out of water, and you can navigate the space in this sort of nice way. And I think if you pick a couple of these things as your focus for a little while, maybe for a month, maybe for a week, depending on, the kind of skill that you choose, and sort of assess yourself as you go. And when you feel like you can pretty much execute that skill without too much stress, without too much anxiety, then you will have a sense that, yes, you can now move on with mastering another skill, or maybe you're now ready. You're now ready to go to a marathon. So here are some of my essential skills to work on to be ready to go to a marathon. There are, of course, going to be two different skill sets depending on whether you're a leader or a follower. I'm curious how you think about it. I would love some feedback, whether you want to add some things to the list, or if you disagree with something, you can also let me know that, as always. Love hearing from you. Reach out to me at I'm So Tango on social media, or connect at imsotango.com and my email. Okay, so I'm going to start with the leaders. Leaders, here are the things that you need to sort of have under your belt before you go to a marathon. And these are not in any particular order. I just kind of wrote them out as I was thinking them, so there's no hierarchy. All right, so the first one is Capaseo. Capaseo, so the basic etiquette of Capaseo, inviting someone to a dance. For you as a leader, you sort of have to know how to do it, okay? So you don't have to be great at it, and it might not feel yet very comfortable. You might also only be comfortable inviting somebody you know. That might be the case for you. But as long as you kind of know the gist of it, it's okay. So general outline. But if you can work on being a little bit more comfortable with it, so that it's not so anxiety filling, then that's a good skill to work on. Number two, floor craft. Okay, really be able to move in a line of dance. I feel like if I were to reorder these and put a hierarchy on them, probably floor craft is at the top because you cannot do anything if you don't know how to follow the line of dance. And it's different. The women, or I should say followers, if you're a follower, you don't have to necessarily have the same floor craft in mind. Floor craft for followers is very different. But for leaders, for you, it's important to be able to walk in a line of dance, looking ahead, being able to position yourself in the room, be aware of people around you, so that you know kind of how like not to kick people and not run into furniture. Again, you don't have to be perfect, right? So you might be at a level where you can do it, but not when it's really crowded. So you might choose to go to marathon, but go earlier in the night or during the day before the floor gets really populated. So floor craft, I would say from the point of view of vocabulary, you actually don't need to know very much, okay? The bare bones for you as a leader that you need to know to make it functional, okay? We're not making it a masterpiece. We're just making it functional so you can go along in the line of dance. You need to be able to walk, and you need to be able to do a couple of basic turns. So walking in a straight line forward, and then a simple turn to the right and a simple turn to the left. If you know those three things, you can go to a marathon and have a good time. Okay? In terms of vocabulary, everything builds on top of that. What I teach usually is just keep focus on your goal. When it comes to social tango, your goal is to proceed along the line of dance. That's your main priority. Then comes everything else like technique and vocabulary and all of the fancy stuff. You will notice very quickly that there are some dancers who dance in the opposite direction of that value system. They prioritize their vocabulary and their physical prowess instead of the line of dance. And it's very frustrating. It makes it very frustrating for everyone else. The dance floor can only handle a handful of these kinds of dancers. So, as much as possible, your role as a leader on the dance floor is to respect and help maintain the flow and make sure that people around you have as much space as you need for your own dance. That's the bigger dance of tango. The other thing that you really need as a leader is to be able to walk on the beat, okay? Of all the musicality concepts, this one, walking on the beat, which tango music is tricky that way because there is no percussion. As Western listeners, we typically are expecting the rhythm to be given to us by something like a percussive drum, right? But in tango, we don't have that. So you have to learn to hear the beat as given by all of the other instruments. In the case of tango, the main instruments giving the underlying beat are piano and the upright bass. Sometimes it takes a little while to learn to hear them. And so if you are a new dancer and you don't know if you're walking on the beat or not, you don't know the difference between walking on the beat and not walking on the beat, you're not sure, then I would focus on that and spend some time either in class asking people for feedback and getting a sense from other dancers whether you're actually walking on the beat. That will be very helpful, and it will really help you get dances, okay? Because I tell you, if you know 3 moves, the walking, right turn, left turn, and you walk on the beat, I will dance with you. But if you know those 3 moves, or maybe you know 10 moves, but you can't walk on the beat, there's no way. There's no way. It's impossible. I shouldn't say impossible. I mean, it's possible, but it's very unlikely. So walking on the beat of the music is the bare minimum you need to know how to do, okay? Because it kind of makes the whole thing work, okay? Now, to that end, when we're thinking about music, I think it's really helpful, not critical, but helpful for you to know the difference between tango, valse, and milonga, to be able to hear that difference, okay? How can that be useful? Well, it can be useful because you might find out that you don't like to dance milonga or valse, that it's actually hard to lead it, which it is for some people. So you might not want to end up on the dance floor when those tandas are playing because you're not going to be at your best and you might not enjoy it. So you want to identify that, and vice versa, of course. Maybe you really love milonga. Maybe it's really easy for you to dance valse, so you want to recognize when it's playing, okay? Lastly, some of the basic etiquette that happens at the milonga, similar, the milongas at the marathon are very similar to milongas that are your local milongas. So the basic etiquette that you observe at your local milonga will be pretty similar to the marathon. But it might be that you're coming from a smaller community where the etiquette is a little bit more relaxed. And so it's good to kind of know the general conventional etiquette, okay? Like the fact that typically it's the leader who capaceos the follower and invites her or him, them. Typically, the leader walks to the follower to lead them onto the dance floor. The leader walks the follower back to their table. Like that sort of etiquette, because you might go to a marathon or a festival that has like a very posh milonga, and you just kind of want to be prepared for those kinds of etiquettes to be there, and of course adapt as you go. But of course, once you're there, you can chat some people up and ask them the questions and have them kind of help you out. And who knows, maybe I'll be there and you can ask me questions. I'm happy to help you as well. Okay, now let's talk about the followers. Followers have a different set of skills that they need to master because, fortunately or unfortunately, it is a lot more likely that a beginner follower will be dancing with dancers much more advanced than them. It doesn't happen as much for beginner leaders, and part of it is because of the way the capaceo works. So a beginner leader might not try to capaceo an advanced followers, but an advanced leader most likely will definitely capaceo a beginner follower. That happens a lot. So for followers, you need to be prepared for some different things. I would say in terms of vocabulary, you want to be able to walk backwards in heels or flats. So if you dance in heels or flats, you just want to be good walking backwards. Have that down, because walking backwards is like the 90% of the work that you're doing. And for some people, it's actually a little tricky to learn to walk backwards with ease. So there's some alignment things that have to happen. You got to have your hips back. You have to be able to push your weight off the front leg. There's a lot of technical stuff there. So if you're just starting tango, or if you've been in tango for a little bit, but you're sort of kind of unsure about your walk, and sometimes you lose balance, or you're getting closer and further away from your partner a lot and you don't know why, then seek out some feedback from fellow dancers, some advanced dancers. Maybe take a private with a teacher. I'd recommend that you get feedback from followers who follow, rather than feedback from leaders, because another follower will be able to give you a more precise explanation using words that you can relate to. A lot of times when you're getting feedback as a follower from a leader, it's like they know what they mean, but you might not know what they mean because the language is slightly different. So walking back, basic turns. But for followers, instead of just saying basic turn, I'm going to really be specific here. I'll say you need to know the molinete pattern, okay, which is sort of an agreed upon pattern that you execute when the leader starts turning around themselves. And it's a set of steps: forward, side, backside, forward, side, backside. Okay, if you've done those steps, you've done the molinete. It's just walking around the leader, and it's a very common pattern. Most of the other sequences come out of that. So you just want to be ready that when you're walking around your partner, you're automatically, unless they lead something different, you are primed to go into that pattern. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if the molinete is a new word in your vocabulary, then for sure, go ahead and take a class with someone or get them to explain to you and sort of feel it in your body. Because once you feel it, you'll sort of have it. So there are a couple of other movements that you need to know because they're led very frequently. Okay, one of them is the cross. So notice the leaders don't necessarily have to know the cross. You can actually lead and make it work without knowing how to lead the cross. You don't need to lead the cross, but as a follower, you need to be able to follow the cross because all of the dancers are going to be leading it. So the cross is where your left shin comes in front of your right ankle. Again, if that is new to you, then put that on your list. I need to learn what the cross is. Okay, and there's different places that you can enter the cross from. So you need to be able to feel those places to catch them because it's so much of the vocabulary that you will experience at the marathon. The other movement that you want to have under your belt is the boleo. And again, boleos don't need to be led. It's not a movement that you have to learn as a leader right at the beginning. It's something that happens much later. But as a follower, you end up feeling the boleo led a lot. So you need to have that technique. It's a bit of a more advanced movement, but actually the more important thing that you need to learn about it is that it needs to stay on the floor when you're dancing at a crowded milonga. So this is one of the most annoying things that more seasoned dancers really complain about. And there's been articles written and memes created to convince people to not do this, but it's still, it is done still. So what you need to learn to do is two things. First of all, you need to be able to kick the boleo if you're going to take it off the floor in such a way that it does not go out and kick someone else. There's technique for that. You need to be able to sort of have it wrap more around you. So I'm sorry I can't explain it very well in this format, but it sounds like I need to do a tutorial on boleo technique again. So you either need to be able to kick it in such a way that it doesn't kick out of the area of your embrace so that you don't kick another person, or you need to be able to kick it so it stays on the floor. So those two things are very, very useful, because when you're dancing in a crowded space, you'll be able to express the boleo, but keep it on the floor. And then if you have a little bit more space, but not too much, there's still people around you, you'll be able to know that when you kick it, it's not going to hit anybody, because you'll know the technique for that. So that's what I would recommend that you master, or not master, but just sort of get under your belt so that you're not surprised when you're being led that, because sometimes you'll get an advanced dancer and they're trying to lead you into these movements, and there's this deer in the headlights look and a lot of stress. So you want to minimize that. And that's why I'm saying you don't have to know these movements perfectly. You just need to know how they feel so you know how to respond. All of them are going to get more and more practiced in your body. So the whole point is that you start dancing as much as possible, as soon as possible, because the more you dance, the easier these movements get. So you won't be so overwhelmed. It's just at the very beginning that it feels like, whoa, this is kind of new. Okay, so a couple of other things I'm going to mention here that don't have to do necessarily with the vocabulary is, number one, I would say, as well as for the leaders, it's good to know the difference between milonga, valse, and tango rhythms. Training your ear to be able to tell the difference, I think, is a really great skill for very similar reasons that I mentioned before. But I also, and this, I would say it's useful for both leaders and followers. I'd say it's good to learn the basic formatting of tandas throughout the night. Usually in one cycle that the DJ plays, you'll hear 2 tandas of tango followed by a valse tanda, and then 2 tandas of tango followed by a milonga tanda. It's a very conventional way to organize the music. And if you know that, and you can tell whether the tanda has started or is ending, how many tango tandas we've listened to versus when is the milonga tanda playing, it's just a nice thing to orient yourself with. It's not essential, but very useful, because it kind of gives you somewhat of a little bit more insight into what's going on around you and educates you more on the music as well. Lastly, very important skill for followers to have is how to say no. Not something that leaders have to worry about, because leaders say no by not choosing someone, right? Like for leader, the no is built in to choosing someone over someone else. But as followers, we're going to be receiving the invitation. And as a follower, whether you're a beginner or not, chances are you're going to get a lot of invitations. Just be prepared for that. And you want to be able to say no. And it's a good thing to train right away. If you don't want to dance with someone, you want to practice a couple of things. One is you want to practice averting your gaze from a cabeceo. So if somebody is inviting you in a traditional way, they're looking your direction and nodding their head to the side, you want to learn to look at them with the stillness of an iceberg and then look away. You don't have to do that dramatic. But basically, you need to learn to avert the gaze and not have any kind of response like, no, like shaking your head. No, you don't want to shake your head. You don't want to hide. You just want to look away. If you're being invited in somewhat of an improper way, which does happen a lot, and we've talked about this, it's okay that it happens, but if it does happen to you, you want to be able to very casually look them in the eye and say, no, thank you, or not right now. Say it with a smile And my favorite way of, I guess, teaching people how to do this is, instead of thinking about it that you're saying no to someone's invitation and it's all dramatic, imagine that there is a waiter coming around with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, and he's coming up to you and he's saying, hors d'oeuvres? And you say, no, thank you. Okay, it's like that. Just have this very casual, lighthearted, like it's no big deal. So you want to hone that, and this is good to know no matter what, whether you're going to marathon or Malonga, or if you're being propositioned somewhere else, like somebody wants something from you, they want to give you something, they want to sell you something, and you can just look them straight in the eye and say, no, thank you. So I think those are my essential skills that I would recommend that you work on before going to a big festival or marathon. I am sure I'm missing something. I'm sure there are other things that would be really helpful. And if you out there can think of them, or you do know them already, send me a message, because I think this is a nice thing to have. I might write this up and sort of have it on my website, because I think it's helpful to have a list, right? We like lists. We like checking things off. I'm going to conclude this episode with a little bit of gratitude, because we are in the week of Thanksgiving, and those of us here in the United States, we get to enjoy a whole day of uncontrolled eating and lounging. At least that's my experience. I really enjoy this day when it's like one delicious food after the other for 12 hours. Maybe for some of you, you're more health conscious, and I'm with you on that too. It's good to have some balance. But I ask myself, what am I grateful for right now? And there are many things, of course, that I'm grateful for, and I might be sounding so cliche. I'm sorry. Oh gosh, but I guess I'm being a little bit sentimental here. But seriously, I am grateful that you dance tango. Okay? I'm grateful for that, because there are not many people in the world who can do that. There's thousands of us, but not millions. I don't remember the actual numbers. Somebody actually tallied up approximately how many dancers dance tango in the world. I think it should be more than that. But those of us who actually dance, it's a really amazing thing that we do, because I really feel that when we can be in this practice of physical intimacy and support and connection and community, that is this energy that we actually need as human beings. We're hungry for it, and people die for it. People die without it, and we have it. We cultivate it, and when we dance, I really feel like that dancing tango, we generate this field of positive energy around us, and when we're all together, that field expands exponentially. And especially during COVID, I really felt that quite clearly from hosting my virtual event, Earth Virtual Malonga, that lasted for 2 whole years. And every month or every other week for a while, we would spend 3 hours together. And I really felt it. I really felt how tango somehow can cross space and time and can connect us in a way that's super magical. And it makes other people happy. It makes you happy. It makes other people happy. I believe it makes the whole planet happier, us dancing tango. So thank you for continuing to dance, for contributing, for exploring, for creating, for expressing yourself, for giving your true nature expression on the dance floor. And I look forward to meeting with you one day and sharing in this thing called tango in person. So happy Thanksgiving to those of you who are celebrating. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of the week. Enjoy the dancing, enjoy the connection, and we will continue the banter next week.